between members of parliament on the NDC side. The members of parliament on the MPP side, as you would see, are seated and are onlookers, if you like. They are watching what is unfolding in the middle of the Chamber of Parliament. The military have just invaded the Chamber of Parliament, and it is unbelievable and unprecedented what is happening here at the Chamber of Ghana's Parliament. The military and some members from the police force, armed, are now in a standoff with members of parliament on the side of the NDC. What you find in your shot now is live pictures from the chamber where both sides, the majority and the minority side, just clashed over the ballot box after one of the live pictures from the chamber where three are currently in a standoff between.
Right, so those were pictures from Parliament. Latif Idris was running the commentary there, and the Speaker yesterday referred to what happened as unruly behavior and commotion. He says that what happened breaches the sanctity of the votes. These things happen. He says what happened would otherwise attract severe punishment in connection with the election of the Speaker, otherwise attract severe punishment. Then he makes the comment that what makes it worse is the total absence of justification or reasonable excuse. Total absence of justification or reasonable excuse. Let me take your brief comments, Martin and Kofi Bentel, so that you may let the leader here, Honorable Ayarga, get to know how you feel as citizens about these circumstances, and then we hear what they have to say as well. Yes, Bagwing also was very unhappy about what he called the armed soldiers on the floor. Yes, so start with you, Kofi.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Kofi.
Very well. So we all witnessed what happened in Parliament, and I have had to answer to so many people and explain, oh, what do you think? What happened? Can somebody be arrested? Must they be arrested? I'm saying so because you may think it does not matter to people, but I was surprised how many people wanted to understand why. And also through the media, you ask, why is it that, for instance, Carlos Ayinkra will not face any of punishment when people who did similar things outside Parliament, some of them are in jail? So first, let's say nobody should say that these things do not matter. In my answers, I've had to explain that as somebody who takes Parliament seriously and also has studied the history of Parliament, and if you get it from that point of view, it takes on a different picture. It's a very, 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 very serious thing. One, that members of Parliament show the utmost contempt for the House. It's a very serious thing because we have this sense of Parliament. That is the place where real work is done, laws are passed. These people are very serious and they look at their work and they do their best about it. They check the executive and all these things. So seeing them the way we saw them was really sad. That is not to say we are naive and we don't know that Parliament, or parliaments elsewhere have similar problems. But I just want to say that the general populace really looks and takes Parliament very, very seriously. So that contempt and all those things really had a problem. The substantive issues, however, are that from a lawyer's point of view, assault was committed in Parliament. There was criminal behavior. Okay, there were breaches of all kinds of rules. I mean, the scuffles that happened and some of those things that went on. I think that in future, if it's possible, some negotiations on, the back or off the public eye should be gone into. I know they do that, but I'm saying should be done in such a way that we would avoid these spectacles. Now, I have to say that we like Parliament as it is, from a citizen's point of view, from an analyst's point of view. And we think they must find a way to make it work. So what we saw, if that is an indication of what is going to happen in the next 4 years, and I don't think so, but if that is an indication, it's going to be very worrying. So to put it mildly, it was very disturbing. We still think that Parliament has not done enough to purge itself of the contempt of its own members. We think that Carlos Ahinkra walking away free will put a huge problem, okay, in our future efforts to clamp down on people, for instance, who take ballot boxes, etc. Somebody was shot. So it's a very serious matter. We are still waiting to see what the final conclusions are concerning what went on. I think situations like Esla sitting on another member of Parliament, it's jarring. All right, it offends all kinds of sensibilities, and nobody is perfect or anything. But in the chamber of Parliament, those things have a certain effect, and they tend to be magnified. So we all hope that they will be, watched in future.
You are saying, for example, that Carlos Ahinkra ought to be dealt with for snatching the ballot papers and attempting to destroy them, run away with them. We had the two earlier situations, or three occasions, where there was, violent conduct towards the ballot box and the booth actually damaged. What are you looking forward to when you say it will discourage punishment of people who offend the election laws? The election laws, as we know, are public election laws. The election of the speaker, as we understand, cannot be construed as a public election. So you cannot use the representation of the people's law offenses against, interferences with an election to punish the members of Parliament. So what are you looking at?
Very well. So you attempted me to go into all those other issues. So in the origins of Parliament, Parliament was sovereign. In our Parliament, Parliament is not sovereign. Parliamentarians are masters of their own rules, but they are not above the law. Conduct outside Parliament may be criminal. Conduct inside Parliament, if it is criminal, is also criminal. Now, much as you may want to make a few exceptions and have maybe a different regime in place, you need to see that something is done, because it cannot be said that somebody committing that kind of crime outside Parliament, if it is a crime, if it is committed inside Parliament, it is not a crime. Now, if we are going to even change it, somebody needs to articulate why it has to be different and what should be done in that context. Because in some people's eyes, that being done inside Parliament is worse. In some people's eyes, and they have a claim that, look, if somebody does this under a mango tree in Bojuase, and it is criminal, you doing it in the chamber of Parliament on live TV is worse. So whether it's worse or it is not worse, however it will be treated, the fundamental issues should be there. Parliament is not sovereign. Members of Parliament are subject to law. What happens in Parliament, if it is criminal outside Parliament, cannot be said not to be criminal in Parliament. And if it is done outside and it's a problem, it being done within Parliament cannot be said to be less of a problem. Indeed, in many cases, it is more of a problem. So I can't tell exactly what they should do, but I am absolutely sure that if nothing is done, it will undermine efforts in future of holding ordinary people accountable when they do similar things.
Right. Martin, if you may start from where Kofi, lives. How do you deal with the members offending or errant members? How do you deal with them?
Okay, so Sam, you know, in law used to hold a person accountable, I am thinking that we should use the Commission of Inquiry approach. That is the Article 278 approach, where the president may set up a commission of inquiry, or Parliament itself, by resolution, will ask the president to set up a commission of inquiry. Okay? And this is important because you can see that because it involves parliamentarians, we cannot afford to say they should be in charge of their own investigations in this case. We want it to be neutral and independent. So that if we did, Sam, what will happen is that if there are findings made, those findings go against the persons who misconducted themselves. And you know, even depending on what happens, some of the findings of a commission of inquiry will bring about some, it's an indictment. It affects the records of the person, okay? And even, you know, in terms of standing as a member of parliament in future, then there's provision that disqualification of a person who wants to stand as a member of parliament under Article 94, when you've been found by a commission of inquiry to have misconducted yourself, blah, 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 you say. So I'm thinking in that area that if the criminal law is going to give us, or in other ways, if we can't find our way very clear in the criminal area, for the civil area, it's so clear that we can use a commission of inquiry to hold these parliamentarians accountable. Maybe, Sam, will it be useful that perhaps I read Article 278 just briefly, maybe if listeners and viewers want to. 278, it says, I'm skipping some other parts. The president shall, by constitutional instrument, appoint a commission of inquiry into any matter of public interest where A, the president is satisfied that a commission of inquiry should be appointed, or B, the Council of State advises that it is in the public interest to do so, or C, Parliament, by a resolution, requires that a commission of inquiry be appointed to inquire into any matter specified in the resolution as being a matter of public importance. So that is it. I think we should activate Article 278.
First of all, do you agree that the election of the Speaker of Parliament is not a public election under PNDC Law 284, which restricts the definition of a public election to an election under that law, as in the Representation of the People law? The Criminal and Other Offences Act also defines public election to be, it says public election shall be construed by reference to Article 49. Article 49 is where it says the ballot shall be secret of the Constitution and includes an election, the qualification for voting at which, or the mode of voting at which, is determined or regulated by any enactment. Do you subscribe to the view that what happened there is not a public election and therefore they are not subject to the sanctions provided under the Representation of the People's law, by which people snatch ballot during the elections, they were convicted, they are going to jail, they are paying fines. Some of them, or almost all who were found guilty, have been banned from voting, being registered and voting in elections in the next 5 years.
Absolutely, Sam. I agree with you that what happened in Parliament is not the normal public elections as envisaged in the Representation of People's Act. Yes, you remember that's not even the only one that doesn't apply. You remember when it comes to party primaries, we've had this banter before privately with lawyer Ace and Kuma and all that.
That's right.
Where we even stated that we need an urgent reforms to the law so that the primaries, the vote buying and all that. Yes, so this is another lacuna we found. So I think that now that these lacunas have become two, that is to say, elections for members of parliament at the parliamentary candidate at the primaries, it's not a public election as envisaged under the Representation of People's Act, and also the election of a Speaker of Parliament and the deputies is not also one of them. This reinforces the need for legislative reforms so that we can rope in these two lacunas.
Can you imagine how members of the public feel that they will be punished even where they try to breach the secrecy of the ballots, and they are members of parliament? You say they are exempt. Meanwhile, you tell them every day that your constitution says we are all equal before the law.
Yes, I've heard public commentaries. I've seen how our people have been disgusted. They feel very disappointed that our MPs did that. Yes, and I know, well, being a parliament, what happened on that day was bound to happen one day or another. But we must hold them accountable. We must. Yes, we must. So
we must hold them accountable. We must hold them accountable, except they suffering criminal sanctions. How about the Attorney General prosecuting them under the general criminal law? If you stole the ballots, that is theft. If you damage the booth, that is damage to public property. Section 255, thereabout of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, prevention of election by force. Section 256, corruption, intimidation, among others in elections. These are in the Criminal Offences Act.
Sam, for that one, the issue is that look at Article 1, the one on the immunities of parliamentarians.
117. 117.
116.
Okay.
Let me see. It says that civil or criminal proceedings shall not be instituted against a member of parliament in any court or place out of parliament for any matter or thing brought by him in or before parliament by petition, bill, blah, blah, blah. So that one, because it happened in there, and the question is parliament. So you see, even though parliament itself had not been, let's say they hadn't started a session, it would appear on the face of it that since election of a speaker is an integral part of constituting parliament, it appears they can run for some cover in this one.
But this one, Martin, Article 117 is about civil process and the service on the member. It's not about committing an offense. 116. Okay, okay.
For the criminal,
I get you.
No, it's also about criminal proceedings.
All right.
It's that 116. It says civil or criminal proceedings shall not be instituted.
I get that. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So because it's slippery, and also because this is the first time, that's why I'm suggesting that let's use the Commission of Inquiry approach. Then let's find out, let's indict them. And remember, Sam, but it's not a mean punishment for somebody to be disqualified from standing as a member of parliament. Under Article 94, I'm going to 94.2, it says that 94.2D, the disqualification criteria, it says has been found by the report of a commission, okay, or committee of inquiry to be incompetent to hold public office, or is a person in respect of whom a commission or a committee of inquiry has found that while being a member, while being a public officer, he acquired assets, blah, blah, blah. So what I'm saying is that this one has been found to be incompetent because of the misbehavior there. So I think if we do the Commission of Inquiry approach, we can disqualify some people, we can make findings against them.
All right. There are members of the public, and this is my final question to you before I come to my guest in the studio, who disagree with you on the basis that what happened in the House is so clear So you don't need any commission to inquire into anything. It is so clear, so obvious. In fact, they themselves have admitted to some of these wrongs. How about their own standing orders, which they breached? Can they use that to punish them as well?
Good. Yeah, so let's come to the first part that they say it's so obvious. But let's remember the maxim. It's good they've raised it, so let's remind ourselves of the basic rules. You can't find somebody liable, or you can't convict a person of a crime until you have proven him guilty. And then the civil one, until you have given him a hearing, or the alternative party. So though it appears in flagrante delicto, we've seen with our own eyes, due process requires that we set up a commission and then take them through. So when it comes to cross-examination and all that, that is where they can make it easy by saying,
all right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. Let me come in here and start with Honorable Mahama Yarga. Yes, it does appear that, but you yourselves, are you interested in any process to punish? The Speaker said these things shouldn't have happened, and they have happened. Is that where it ends?
Yesterday, the Speaker unreservedly condemned what happened in his first formal communication to the House. And I think that the two leaders, when they commented on the Speaker's formal communication to the House, did associate themselves with the condemnation by the Speaker. Now, on both sides, before yesterday's formal communication by the Speaker, have in one way or the other sought to defend our actions in various radio discussions, television discussions, and etc. And also, we have listened to public commentary on the matter and still commenting on the matter and the efforts to find some legal angle to the implications of the conduct of the MP-elects in the Parliament. I start from a position of principle. And that night, if you recall, when the debate took place about the issue of the Asin North Member of Parliament and his right to participate in the proceedings, I took a principled position that technically there was no Parliament. And technically, he was not a Member of Parliament. He was only a Member of Parliament elect. And as a Member of Parliament elect, the Clerk to Parliament had no jurisdiction over him to be taking services on his behalf and attempting to serve him in the chamber or give him notice of the service in the chamber. I still maintain that principled position that we were at that time when all these incidents occurred in the process of constituting Parliament. There was no Parliament. On the basis of Article 93 of the Constitution, there was no Parliament.
You were strangers in the Parliament?
No. Parliament is not just a building. Parliament, by Article 93 of the Constitution, is at least 140 members having been sworn in after they have elected a speaker. That is when Parliament exists. The building standing is just a chamber.
So the point there is...
The building standing is just a chamber.
The point here is...
So the point is that as at the time when all these things were happening, we were not yet a Parliament. We were MP elects brought into a chamber to go through the process of constituting a Parliament. So the question is, will the rules applicable to members of Parliament apply to us? My position still remains no. The rules will not apply to us.
But you were using the same rules on that day.
Yes, the rules of constituting a parliament are clearly defined, and we were supposed to be using those rules. But as you could see, those rules left gaps, and those gaps were the issues in contention that night. What are the gaps? In the case of public elections regulated under the Representation of the People's Law, you will see that what is a polling booth? What should happen to a polling booth? Pursuant to that, the EC enacted CIs which define clearly how a polling booth should be placed, how voting should be done, how agents should be determined, how counting should be done, how declaration of results should be done, and etc. But in our case, the lacuna is in the fact that the Constitution says we should elect a speaker, and I think it's a public election. The Constitution says we should elect a speaker. Our standing orders say we should elect a speaker, but our standing orders do not go as far as detailing such things as should we have a polling booth, where should we place a polling booth, and this and that, and should we have agents on behalf of candidates, and should they be represented during the counting, etc. There are general provisions in our standing orders regulating when the speaker decides that there should be a head count or we should vote on a motion,
bottom line,
etc.
There was no parliament.
There was no parliament.
There were no members of parliament.
There were no members of parliament.
There cannot be any criminal or legal liability.
No. We can't say that there cannot be criminal or legal liability. So if there was no parliament, and if we cannot claim the immunities and privileges provided therein, can the general criminal legislation relating to the conduct of citizens apply to us? That for me should be the issue. And I think in addition to all the articles that have been mentioned by Pebu and Co, we need to pay attention also to Article 122 and then 123, so that we can add that to the general debate about what legal principles will apply. Okay. 122 says that an act or omission which obstructs or impedes Parliament in the performance of its functions, or which obstructs or impedes a member or officer of Parliament in the discharge of his duties, or affronts the dignity of Parliament, or which tends either directly or indirectly to produce that result, is contempt of Parliament. Now, there was no Parliament in the sense of Article 93, but there are officers of Parliament who were in existence at that time, namely the Clerk, the Marshal, and both the Constitution and the standing orders confer on them a function of constituting Parliament, which is to convene the MPs elect, to set up the system for them to elect one person as the speaker, and then that person then swears in the rest of the MPs elect, and then a Parliament properly constituted will come into being. Do any of the conducts amount to obstructing the Clerk and the Marshal in the performance of their duties? That for me becomes a question of legal possibility. Is that okay? And Article 123 then says that where an act or omission which constitutes contempt of Parliament is an offense under the criminal law, the exercise by Parliament of the power to punish for contempt shall not be a bar to the institution of proceedings under the criminal law.
Right.
Okay?
So this trumps Article 116.
Exactly. So there are a couple of legal possibilities to look at. But whether an attempt to take on individuals in relation to conduct amounting to obstruction of the Clerk or the Marshal in the performance of his or her duty will be accepted by the House for criminal prosecution is another matter, because the Parliament, now properly constituted, will seek to fight to protect the sanctity of the institution and not allow itself to be subjected to these processes. That is a legal possibility.
I appreciate that the Article 122 and 123 that you have read and so nicely, expoused to us, explains the reason in your own standing orders. It says you can, through your internal processes, punish your members for disorderly or contemptuous conduct, and that punishment is not a bar to criminal prosecution.
And that, as I said, is premised on they already being members of the Parliament. And we're talking about a situation where they were not yet members of the Parliament. So the question is, what do you do? And secondly, now, the issue is the Constitution makes provision for secret ballot and says that any public election must be by secret ballot. And Article 49 is there. Now, one side is saying that efforts were being made to ensure secrecy of ballots. Does the evidence bear that out? That there was an effort within the chamber at that time, before Parliament was inaugurated, to ensure that there was secret ballot. Were people taking steps to ensure a constitutional injunction? What does Article 1 say about people taking steps, or is it 2 or 3, Article 1 or 2 or 3 of the Constitution, say about people taking steps to ensure that the Constitution is not overthrown, the Constitution is not violated? Were you to wait until an improper thing is done? The secrecy of the ballot is compromised. And then afterwards go to the Supreme Court under Article 1 to challenge what has happened? Or were you to take immediate steps to ensure that there was secrecy of the ballot?
What the Constitution says,
yes,
if you use unlawful means to overcome, it will not be an offense.
Yes.
In Article 3,
yes,
it's a coup.
Yeah.
This is not a coup, is it?
No. But then I'm saying that we are operating within a given constitutional vacuum. A time when there was no president, a time when there was no minister, a time when there was no parliament. The only thing that existed among the three arms of government was the judiciary, okay? And then you are dealing with a situation where there is a constitutional...
I said it's a coup, but let me read it in full.
Yes.
It's very useful.
Yes.
Article 3, Clause 4 says, all citizens of Ghana shall have the right and duty at all times to defend this constitution.
Yes.
So not only coup,
yes.
And in particular to resist any person or group of persons seeking to commit any of the acts in Clause 3. The acts in Clause 3 are acts of violent or unlawful means when people want to suspend or overthrow or abrogate the Constitution or any part of it. So then B, to do all in their power to restore this Constitution after it has been suspended, overthrown, or abrogated. Then 5 says, any person or group of persons who suppresses or resists the suspension, overthrow, or abrogation of this Constitution, as referred to in Clause 3 of this article, commit no offense.
Now, I mean, clearly, if you read Article 3, I will say, in all honesty and sincerity, that the focus is on an overthrow of the Constitution, okay? And the question then is, what amounts to an overthrow of the Constitution? That is the matter that we will
breaching the secrecy, requirement of voting is an overthrow of the Constitution. That's what you're saying.
Or a part of the Constitution, because it doesn't just say the Constitution.
All right.
It also says a part of the Constitution. So a part of the Constitution is Article 49, which is so fundamental to the function of democracy.
Okay.
That is the secrecy of the vote.
Right,
so let me just conclude by saying that all the provisions, all the issues that have been raised in relation to accountability, in all sincerity, are relevant. As members of parliament, we're not saying that people should not be held accountable for their conduct. But when you start the process of trying to hold people accountable for their conduct, the context must be looked at, okay? And maybe in a case like this, the issue of commission of inquiry, we've all seen, like you say, we all saw what happened. We're all there. The cameras captured everything. So the reality is that there was some misconduct. The reality is that one side will say the misconduct was engendered by an attempt to breach a constitutional provision that we were resisting.
Right. Okay.
Whether that is justification enough or not is another matter. But this whole process reveals some weaknesses, some structural defects, some
and let me hold you strictly to 1 minute, yes, so that we are clear with this issue.
Yes.
When we return, we are going to talk about other issues of your majority-minority questions. But how about the military, quote-unquote, invasion? You have been very critical about it, as in the NDC group. What should happen?
Well, I mean, I still take a position that there was no parliament yet. It was just a chamber.
Did you anticipate my cross-examination?
That
if you have said that, as for them, they should punish them, I would refer you back to what you had just said.
No, I always argue from a position of principle, and I don't forget my earlier principles.
All right.
So there was no parliament yet. It was just a chamber. We're in the process of constituting a parliament. The key officers recognized at that time with power and authority was the clerk and the marshal. Did they invite the military? Did they not invite the military? If they invited the military or sought their assistance, that's another matter. But I hear the marshal has said that he did not invite the
Therefore, what
military.
should happen?
So if he did not invite the military, then that's the matter for the marshal and the military to resolve, because we at that time were not yet a parliament
no suggestions
with power to deal with anything
you have no
that happened at that time.
To happen. Your leader says that Kwesi Fori, who led them in, he saw him, will be cited for contempt of parliament.
There was no parliament. I still take that position.
Okay,
there was no parliament.
Thank you. Right. Honorable State Chairman Sabos, is that the end of the road? Yes, everything has happened. So let's move on, because as we begin to see from yesterday, it looks like you guys are beginning to get together.
I think I should begin by admitting that what happened that day was and is regrettable. It is reprehensible, and we must be bold at that. There shouldn't be any need for any prevarication or any attempt whatsoever to justify it. Yesterday, the speaker spoke to it. We all joined ranks and condemned what happened, beginning from the very genesis. Let's be bold about this. What we failed to do, that is the speaker, myself, and the minority leader, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, amongst us three, what didn't come out clearly was that we did not apologize to the Ghanaian people. And I thought that was a stark and veritable omission. Later, when I reclined, I said, no, we should have done this. And perhaps I should use this platform to apologize to the Ghanaian people for that reprehensible conduct on the part of members of parliament. I'm part of it, even though I did not participate in it. I think that all of us should be held accountable for what happened. My colleague is trying to split hairs, and I cannot really understand the distinction that he's trying to proffer. First of all, we must admit that Parliament is not made up of only members of Parliament. Parliament has two legs. We have the members of Parliament constituting the House and the parliamentary service, the officers who service Parliament. The clerk is the head of that wing, and in the House, the head of that wing is the majority leader, the leader of the House. The two coming together is headed by the Speaker of Parliament. We should understand that. So the fact that the members of Parliament have not been sworn in does not mean that there's no Parliament. The parliamentary service exists, and there is a continuum. We should accept that. So I think that clearly, and I'm happy that my colleague quoted the relevant article to support the fact that, and he quoted Article 122, right? And 122, if I have to re-echo what he said, with respect, the article that he quoted for us, and I do share the sentiments that he expressed, that an act or omission which obstructs or impedes Parliament in the performance of its functions, or which obstructs or impedes a member, that's a member of Parliament, or an officer of Parliament in the discharge of his duties, is an affront, or affronts the dignity of Parliament, or which tends either directly or indirectly to produce such a result, is contempt of Parliament. And that is whether or not it's done by a member of Parliament or even a stranger. Because if you stretch it to say that at the time the members who were involved were MPs elect and that they could not be held accountable in the context of his own defense, I disagree with him. Because if you go on that tangent, it would then mean that strangers who come to Parliament and involve themselves in such acts cannot be sanctioned because they are not members of Parliament. And I want to disagree with him on that.
But your standing orders speak about strangers.
And yes, and that's why I'm saying that we can't stretch to the strangers who misconduct themselves.
Okay.
Right? Assuming the members of Parliament elect had not been sworn in, and if you want to describe them as strangers, they still could be caught in that web. So I don't want to make any excuses for what happened. What is bad is bad. What's regrettable is regrettable. And the
same position on that.
An officer of Parliament means the clerk or any person acting within the presence of Parliament under the order of the Speaker, and includes any police officer on duty in the presence of Parliament, but does not include a person suspended from duty under any enactment in force. So the police officers that we work with, that the Marshal works with, are part of the arrangement that we have in Parliament. Security officers could be invited. In fact, the new orders recognizing the inadequacy of this provision, because the provision mentions only police officers. But in Parliament, we work with even fire service officers, right? Now, we need to include them. And on occasions of events that are performed in Parliament, including maybe State of the Nation address, the budget to be read, and so on, we have other security officers, including the armed forces, coming in. It explains why in the new orders, we are not even talking about the police. We just mentioned security officers to include the military and all. We had a truncation of the conduct of elections, first time, ballot snatching, ballot box snatching. The second time, the same thing happening.
Ballot booth destruction.
Ballot booth destruction in the third instance. In fact, when it happened the second time, I conferred with my colleague, Honorable Harun Edrusu, that can't this go on indefinitely? And I asked him that, look, we have to involve the Marshal and cause the Marshal to invite security officers to protect the voting. I conferred with Harun Edrusu. And then we invited the Marshal and told him, if you feel inadequate, can you invite the security to come and protect the balloting? That was after the second time. after the second truncation. Don't forget, in all that, the first 2 attempts, we had to begin anew, the process. So when we told him that, he said, okay. He did not tell me that he was going to invite them. He said, okay, okay. Then he left us. So when it happened the third time, I called him again. And this time went to the clerk that you guys have to put your acts together. And this terrible thing cannot go on indefinitely. Can you involve the security to take charge and protect the voting? That was what I told the clerk and the marshal. Subsequently, we saw the police and the armed forces enter. I have nothing against it, except they're coming into the chamber armed. That, to me, was dangerous. Because I saw that some of them had their hands on the trigger. And assuming in the melee, one of the guns had gone, one of them would have discharged bullets. I don't, for the life of me, appreciate what could have happened.
And we are just showing you what State Chairman Sabosi is talking about. Some of them had their fingers right on the trigger.
And that was dangerous.
And I'm surprised you say you were talking to this marshal, who himself
had been assaulted,
manhandled,
had been assaulted.
As you say, assaulted.
Yes.
Particularly by John
Jinapo. Booted down.
And yet he was reluctant in bringing them in. Why would that be?
In fact, the first 2, that had not happened. It was the third time that it happened, after we had spoken to him. So when what happened to him happened, I called him again and said, can this go on interminably? At the time, he himself had his own glasses broken. And I'm told subsequently, he had to be hospitalized. The marshal, yes. The marshal of Parliament. And you know that the Marshal Department have submitted a protest to the Speaker through the clerk, complaining what had happened to the head of the Marshal's Department.
There are people who think that both the clerk and the marshal were your weakest link on that day.
The clerk depends on the marshal. And if a marshal is down, trying to save his own life, what happens? So I'm saying, all those processes.
No, but even before these things started, the clerk didn't seem to be in control.
The clerk.
Yeah, the criticism has been that he didn't appear to be familiar or acquainted with what he was going to do.
I don't want to buy into that. You see, I'm not too sure that anybody, thought of the fact that we were going to experience physicalities in the chamber. We disagree, and sometimes in a very bold manner, and be sometimes pushing ourselves to the precipice. But what happened has never happened. Has never happened. And we need to confront same and move forward.
Beyond the fiscal development, the question to him is, he didn't seem to express independence of thought or mind, especially after he gives a ruling sort of, says, I'm not going to recognize the Asin North MP. Then subsequently he comes back to say, well, I read article, 105 to you, you are on your own. Whatever happens, I'm not part of it.
Because after he read out the first information that was communicated to him, and my colleague was trying to offer some defense that at the time he wasn't a member of Parliament. And I'm saying to him that even if he wasn't, and he was a complete stranger, the Clerk to Parliament was in charge at the time. And if he had processes served on him, and the Honorable Dr. Yene, former Deputy Attorney General, was also trying to make some legal argument, which again I disagreed with him, because he said that the clerk couldn't have received the service because it involved he himself as a clerk. On that occasion, he was acting for the institution, and the only time to receive the service was when he was on duty. It couldn't have been served on him in his house, or maybe during a weekend. It could only be served on him when he was in service, that is, in Parliament.
Mr. Yaga is saying that there was no Parliament. So what was the clerk presiding over?
Ask him. He invites us, right? And indeed, there are a few issues that we must contend with. For instance, the summon of Parliament is by the Speaker, via a constitutional instrument, right? At the time, there's no speaker. No constitutional instrument can be issued. And the clerk is not responsible for the issuance of a constitutional instrument. There are matters of practicality. And so we build on conventions and practices. And they are part of the building up of democratic governance. We must understand and appreciate this. So for him to make that distinction, which to me is a distinction without difference. Yes,
you're back to this expression again.
So I think, and then he says that there's a vacuum, there's no president, there's no parliament. You think that when there's no president, there's no parliament, there's no law. There is law, and the law must be seen to be implemented.
Yeah, the issue we're having, the debate we're having is which law should apply. I think that's the debate. All this effort is to find out which law should apply.
You were even talking about the conduct of voting in the House, secret balloting. And it's defined for us by our own orders. And Order 9 makes that provision that in terms of secret balloting relating to the election of speakers, it says when we have to engage in that, the nominations have been received by the clerk announces the ballot, that the ballot now be taken. And then the next step, it says, an officer of parliament shall give to each member present a ballot paper on which, and I'm reading Order 9.3, on which the member may record his vote by writing the name of the person for whom he wishes to vote. That has been the practice. Whenever we have to do secret balloting, they issue ballots to all of us. We go and sit in our places, and then the member is called. And when he's called, he goes to cast his vote. And indeed, it says to us that the 3 says, an officer of parliament shall give each member present a ballot paper on which the member may record his vote by writing the name of the person for whom he wishes to vote, right? And then he says, each ballot paper shall be folded in such a manner that the name written on it cannot be seen. And that is Order 9.5. And that is what we have always been doing. In this particular case, when we went into the chamber, they had printed the names out already. That was a departure from even the normal practice. But you see, the ballots were special ballots. So I asked them, why are you departing from this? Do we have those ballots without any names written on them? And they said they had no such ballots. That is without the names printed. So I said, okay, in that case, we're going to conform to this. Even though strictly, we ought to have rejected the process that they had imposed on us in the first place. Because it was a novelty that was unknown. For whatever reason, right? So that is it. And I think the issue about defense of the Constitution and so on, he himself acknowledges that what the Article 3 is on the overthrow of the Constitution and not otherwise. Maybe if you see any breach of the Constitution, any criminal activity, you see somebody maybe perhaps going to steal, you see that it amounts to a breach of the Constitution. And so
but even in this case, it is your standing orders that prescribes secret ballots for the speaker, not the Constitution.
No, I'm saying instances.
No, I'm saying, supposing that what he's saying is what we go by.
Right.
He says it's in defense of the Constitution.
Yes.
Where in the Constitution does it say that the election of the speaker must be by secret ballot?
The Constitution provides that in the election of
it speaks about the election of the speaker. It doesn't talk about secret ballot.
Yes.
Unless you can point me to
Article, I think Article 104. Let me look at Article 104. I think it's Article 104. Let's see.
Okay, 104 says, 1, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of majority and...
104.4.
104.4.
Yes.
Okay, 104.4. Where Parliament is considering a bill to amend the Constitution or where the voting in relation to the election or removal of any person under this Constitution or under any law voting shall be in secret. So election of the speaker,
Yes.
voting by secret.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That is where we take the inspiration
All
from.
right.
But the secret voting, how it should be done, is prescribed by the order.
Right.
And
So what they have done is rather facilitating. You don't like that? That it's the names are already printed, you take.
No, I'm just
rather
saying
than you
that
write.
it was a departure from what we have been doing.
Right.
Right? When we came to, anytime we come to resorting to secret ballot, we have these ballots given to us, and then you write a name.
Right.
But this time, it had been printed.
So the question now is, what should happen for all these egregious things that...
Order 9.1 also talks about it.
What should happen?
Also prescribes voting should be
It's from,
by secret
from
ballot.
104, from what I quoted.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
saying...
what should happen to the conduct that you say is despicable and everything else? What should happen to the military thing, the aspect that you don't like?
Not the as I said, the military coming in wielding guns. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable.
What should happen? Nothing?
We should probe that. We should probe the conduct of our own people, because we shouldn't just close our eyes. Because when I listened to Kofi Bentel, for instance, he was talking about what offense, what breach was committed by Carlos. I agree with him. And then in the case of Esla, he was talking about Esla going to sit on a male colleague. When Esla was assaulted, he declines to comment on that. And I thought that he was being selective. That is not good enough. The truncation of the processes of voting started with Muntaka, the first and second time, the third time again, and he being joined by other colleagues. Those things we must condemn. The ballot snatching by Carlos Ahinkra cannot be defended in any manner. We must agree on this. We can't pick and choose. Because you see, once you begin to do that, then one side will recline to say that, okay, let's try to defend this person, like my colleague is doing. That,
What have I done?
No, in this case, what breaches were committed in the first place were in defense of the Constitution. You can't do that. You can't do that. They are reprehensible conduct. And let's come together. Because you attempt to make a distinction that, oh, what happened in the earlier instances was an attempt to defend the Constitution. And that's why I tell you that it's a distinction without difference.
So what we want to know...
Confront the reality.
What we want to know...
And by that, we'll come together.
What everybody wants to know is what you will do. Because you are leader of the House. We have the parliamentary network group, your friends in Parliament. They have actually done a petition to the Speaker to ensure that this matter is probed. You are saying probe.
There are vehicles that we can assess, right? We can maybe activate the processes under the Privileges Committee. Unfortunately, the Privileges Committee has not been established as of yet. We are in the process of doing that. Once we do that, can we come together as a House to say that let's refer the conduct of these people to the Privileges Committee? Sometimes, on many occasions, if actions involve members of Parliament, when we take them to the Privileges Committee, then we have this partisan approach to dealing with the matter. And that is not good enough for the image of Parliament. So let's see what we can do there. The Speaker, I believe, I want to believe that Honorable Alban Bagbin, Right Honorable Alban Bagbin, will bring a degree of impartiality to bear on this. We know that he cannot be neutral because he comes from a stock. But what is required of every speaker is not non-neutrality. It's not neutrality, because the speakers would represent one side or the other of the political spectrum. Okay. He's required to be impartial.
I like you to,
and I believe, and I trust that he'll be impartial in guiding us.
Okay.
If the Privileges Committee cannot work and have to resort to Article 298, we must, as a House, come together on that. I think that what has happened should not be allowed to have further progression.
Let me have a very brief chat with Samuel Intim Dakwa, former Clerk of Parliament, and he's worked in all four republics, so to speak, and he's been in Parliament. He's so familiar. So far, I think locally, he's the only one who has given us the opportunity to read about Parliament in books. Thank you very much, Mr. Dakwa. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Great. Thanks for having you.
Right.
Great. Now, and I'll return to you. I will play the video and you answer to us a question because people saw you in a brief interaction with Carlos before he dashed for the ballot. Now, briefly,
yes, what was happening?
Briefly, what do you make? What do you make? What do you make of how the clerk conducted Parliament on the day in question, and the Parliament we now have? Do we have a problem on our hands?
Hello.
Yes.
Please, can you repeat your question? I couldn't hear properly.
What do you have to say about the Parliament we have now?
Well, we began very badly. In fact, the act of members of Parliament on that day was very shameful, and I could call it primitive. You see, you don't have to display this conduct in Parliament because you are called honorable members. And let me say that previously, in fact, when Ghana won its independence and was operating this parliamentary system, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association in London always contacted us when there was problem anywhere in any parliament of Africa. And we got so good with them that they felt that we were a good model. And I can say that they consulted us many times on any problems that arose in other parliaments. And let me say that the conduct of these members was so unacceptable. I mean, a place like Parliament, you don't go there and fight. You argue your case. And if you win your debate, then we accept that one. But you don't start throwing blows, stealing ballot papers, and it's so shameful. And that, I think the Speaker has done very well to say that, to apologize to the nation, and this, he should do that, and appropriate sanctions should be applied to those who committed the offense.
Do we have a majority, so to speak, in the Parliament? The Speaker doesn't think so.
Oh, well,
he says there's a majority
group.
See,
the composition of Parliament, you see, you have 275, you have an odd number. So at any time, you may have majority side and the minority side. The the odd number, if he says that he's going to support this, then we should accept that one. Because the constitution makers also saw the danger in making constituents even number. Because if you have that, you have hung Parliament and they will be paralyzed by decisions. Because any time they voted, it will be equal and paralyzed Parliament. In fact, Parliament cannot function. Okay. And that is why they give the odd number.
Yes.
And the odd number, if he decides to...
We have 137 for NPP, 137 for NDC, and one independent who has now officially written to do business with the NPP.
Certainly, then they should constitute the majority.
So the debate is terminated at this point.
That's right.
With that communication to the Speaker.
That's right. That's right. It's done well, and in fact, we must appreciate what that honourable member had done. He has shown integrity. And
is there not a problem that people vote for you as an independent candidate? Mm-hmm. Then you enter the Parliament and you choose to be with a party. If they wanted to vote for the party, they would have voted for the party's candidate. Is there not a problem with that?
Oh, well, but you see, the member of Parliament elected there must vote. Must vote. You see, he cannot remain mute, even in debate on anything. He must take active part in the in the deliberations of Parliament. And if he decides that he will throw his weight behind these people, then they should allow him to do it. But in any case, if he decides to say that I've joined that party, then the Constitution will say that then resign and then go and seek fresh election. But he is still an independent party. But I will always declare my support for this side. Then we should accept that. And he's written it to the Speaker.
Well, what's the difference in substance then? If you, from day one, you will declare and commit to be with one party and do business with that party, what's the difference in substance?
The difference is this: he's not formally recognized as a member of Parliament in this party. He is an independent member. But I think generally, if he had his own way, he would have joined the party. But it was very unfortunate that he was not allowed to stand for the party.
Okay. The key reason for which we actually had called you was to ask you your assessment of the performance of the clerk. People have been very uncharitable, if you like, quote unquote, to him, that he didn't seem to be ready for the work.
Well, I have something about the clerk, and all that I could say is that for that job, you are the chief advisor to the Speaker and members of Parliament. And therefore, before you assume that office, you must be thoroughly grounded in the rules of Parliament. You can't just go there and say that you are doing that. In fact, you will flop and you will be disgraced. And let me tell you one thing. At one time, we have parliamentary daily. We went to Barbados, and they had appointed a new clerk who was not quite competent with the rules of the debate. When they came, the Barbados returned the visit to Ghana, and they saw how Parliament was operating with the staff. They immediately went and dealt with that idea. But all that I will say that, in fact, for that job, we just not push anybody there. You must be well grounded, have that experience. And in fact, you should know the standing orders, and everything. And you are at that time, when there was no speaker, they've given you the opportunity or the privilege of conducting the election for the speaker. And you were in total control. For example, the decision of the court to the House should have been conveyed to both sides earlier. You see? And then this was not done. They waited this, and I say that a bit harsh with the clerk, but certainly you must start learning it very well. Because if you are not, you are not objective, you are not truthful, you have no integrity, there is no way for you to be in that office.
So this clerk could have done better in your estimation. He didn't do well.
No, he at least he was not in control of the House.
I see. Okay. Unless you have anything else to tell us, we want to say thank you for your time this morning, Mr. Dakwa.
Let me say this, that Parliament should formally apologize to the people of Ghana for their misconduct. In fact, the act must be described as primitive and barbaric.
Okay. Thank you very much. Samuel Intim Dakwa is former Clerk of Parliament. We could say he's the longest serving clerk that the Parliament has seen. Thank you very much once again. We will take a quick break, but before that, Kofi Bento, you have heard Mahama Yarga, you have heard Osei Mensa Bonsu. Martin, you have heard the two of them. What can you say briefly before we go to our break? Kofi Bento, start with you. Please unmute. Please unmute. Yes,
Sorry.
Kofi. Yes,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So first, I heard Honorable Chairman Sambos saying I didn't condemn that. I condemned all of it. But we need, in trying to solve problems, to figure out where did it start. Okay, somebody went into somebody's space insisting that they were going to sit somewhere. In Parliament, the name Parliament itself means speaking. That you don't do anything by force. It should be the soundness of your argument. So that's the first point. I condemn all of it. Secondly, this point that we cannot apply some of the rules outside Parliament to what happens inside Parliament. I was going to say earlier, but I think it's been established that it is only persuasive, but it is not settled. If we take 122 and 123, it makes it clear that even criminal charges can come against members of Parliament acting within Parliament. So that should be clear. Number 3 is that this majority thing, the thing about majority group and majority caucus is important. We have also had problems with the issue of winner takes all in this country. What we are finding in our Parliament is actually what Parliament was designed to be. So nobody should pretend it is an anomaly or it's a problem. And the majority group should not assume that they are the majority caucus and therefore in the determination of chairpersons of various committees, etc., they are going to more or less sweep the floor. It must be split. The nuance here is that this is a very evenly apportioned Parliament. So business cannot be as usual. Our democracy is evolving. And I think this evolution is a good evolution. What has happened in Parliament now, all the things, I don't have time to go into, but I'll just say Parliament should take cognizance of these things and block those holes. I agree with Martin if he says that we should have some sort of a commission. It will not be out of place for some people to be charged just to send an example. So my point again is that Parliament has not done enough. I agree with the former clerk who says that they should apologize, but I don't think it should stop there. We should see some sort of reform, maybe in the new standing orders, so we can avoid these things, or at least make sure that people are aware that there will be consequences if they do some of these things.
Yes, Martin, what do you have to say briefly, including after hearing the two and also the man we can say is an institution in parliamentary history in Ghana?
Great. So my comment, I guess, take on Article 122 and 123. You see, Honorable Ayaga came on the tangent that Parliament was not constituted under 93. So it means that in Parliament, the building is just a chamber. So until there is a speaker and at least not less than 140 elected members, there is no Parliament. So if it says there was no Parliament at the time under 93, then it's difficult to go with the submission respectfully that under 122, 123, there was a clerk of Parliament. Because if there's no Parliament, it can't be a clerk. At best, at the time, he was just a public officer. He was just a public officer. So let's look at the way we are introducing 122 and 123 into the debate. If you say there was no Parliament, how can you say there was a clerk of Parliament? That's the question.
All right. Yes. Now, as Mr. Chairman, we saw you in that clip in the House. We saw you saying something to Carlos Ahenkra before he, took a dash for the ballot papers. There's been speculation that you may have engineered it.
Well, I think before I go into that, it's important to set this record straight. Mr. Bentall, in condemning what happened, really did not address the issue about what happened to Esla, a lady. I didn't start with her going to sit on somebody's lap. She had gone to sit on an empty chair when the one group insisted that it was free sitting, anybody could sit anywhere. She had gone to sit on an empty chair. Somebody went and pulled the seat from under her. That was the genesis of it. And I'm surprised Kofi Bentall doesn't want to accept that.
Yeah.
You see, so that's my
So for those of you watching,
so that's the first, and he's again splitting hairs over the fact that there's a majority group and not a majority caucus. I don't appreciate his own understanding of a majority group and a majority caucus. I don't appreciate his own understanding of that. And he says the chairship of committees must be split. Based on what? Based on what rules, conventions, and practices?
You have already agreed on a ratio.
I guess we can go into that. The ratio is 137, 138. That is how it is. And any group, caucus, that has the majority, by our own conventions and practices and rules, have always assumed the chairship of all the committees. I don't think that helps really to grow our parliament. And the reason why we're moving towards adopting a new standing orders, I think that will give ample space for the minority group or party or caucus to operate and then help to elevate and reposition parliament. Well, I guess we will have time to
and in the ratio you have done, we have seen that you already picked the selections committee.
Yes.
And that one, you have 20 members. And
The
out of the
speaker
20,
chairing.
out of the 20, you have 10 for the NPP and 9 for the NDC.
Yes, the speaker chair.
The speaker is the chair.
Yes.
And that's the ratio you are going to use for all other committees.
For all other committees. That's how it is.
Okay.
I don't know where he's coming from when he says
right.
that the chairship must
So
be
let's speak about that.
based on what rules that he understands or conventions and practices of the House that he appreciates or understands.
Now to that issue.
So the issue that you raised,
right. You speaking with Henkra.
with
before
Henkra.
Yeah.
What happened? And Henkra is not a small boy. He spoke into it the day after, I think the night after the event, and issued a statement that he did what he did on his own volition, not on instructions of anybody, and granted interviews and spoken eloquently to it, and that he said it didn't involve me in any way. Now, you're looking at this picture, where the lady is, that is the officer. You know, to her left, to the lady's left, there's a stack, right? That have been the pile sorting out the ballots, right? That had been sorted out for Professor Michael Quay. Now, before they started the sorting out, the officer was just pulling out the ballot, unfolding them, stretching them out, and putting them on the table without looking at which person a member might have voted for. That was what he was doing. And he did about 8, 10 of them, put all of them in one place. So I asked him, what are you doing? And that officer is Ebenezer Jitro. So I asked him, what are you doing? He says, oh, we're just stretching them out, and afterwards we'll do the counting. That's what he said. But after my inquiry, the initial inquiry, then he started looking at the ballots anytime he took one. So after this pile, the first pile, he started looking at them and he placed them at one side or the other. So the first one then went to the left where the lady was standing. And Anodompre, who was an observer, together with Muntaka, was standing to the left-hand side of Muntaka, where they had started piling up. So, subsequent to that, when he started looking at the piles, at the ballots, I asked him a second question. But you said we're just going to do the counting after we have stretched the ballots out. What are you doing now? I said, oh, leader, we have even agreed now to do the sorting out. So if I say you're sorting out in a precon, and I'm quoting his very words. In that regard, what have you done with the earlier ballots? So when they finished and began counting, he started counting those ballots to the left of Muntaka, where Anodompre was standing. The chief whip for us was standing. And then they pulled one out and said it was a spoiled ballot because the voter had shaded 2 boxes. So when they finished the counting, I was following, it amounted to 136. Whereupon Muntaka gave a victory sign to the NDC side. And then they started jubilating. But I called Anodompre and told him that I didn't believe that the stack there, ostensibly meant for the Right Honourable Speaker now, all of them belong to him. So he should come and watch and verify. Because I thought the first 8 or 10, all of them certainly will not belong to Urban. So he moved from the left-hand side of Muntaka and came and stood there. You watch him. After I told him to be very, very watchful of the ballots. I had no doubt in my mind that those on top belong to Urban. But those beneath, I thought there would be question marks. Then, as you saw, somebody else, I think our colleague from, where's Shaibu from? Shaibu Alasan, Honorable Ayariga. Shaibu Alasan was is it Mankarago?
Yeah.
Yes.
Damango area.
The man who has replaced him, he came and he wanted to engage me. And I was waving him off. I told him, look, I want to follow this. Just at the same time, Carlos came and stood by me. And he was jittery and panicky. And I'm quoting his words. Leader, inti yebetra ma NDC for speaker no ana. That's what he told me. I said, Carlos, what do you mean? We finished voting, we are going to do the counting. Where from this? He insisted, no, this is a first speaker. And I'm saying, hey, Carlos, please get away from me. Please. Because I wanted to follow the counting. I don't know what spirit infected him. In fact, he came to me 3 days ago apologizing for the first time, apologizing for what happened. And then he said, because I had indicated this on one medium, that perhaps he was afflicted with the spirit of Usain Bolt. He said it wasn't Usain Bolt, but Carl Lewis. And we all laughed over it.
All right.
So that's what I told him.
Okay.
And he made a dash and snatched the ballot, which again I'm saying is most reprehensible conduct because it sought to truncate the process.
Right.
And indeed truncated the process.
Did it?
Yes.
Speaker said yesterday that he was elected by 138 votes.
How did he arrive at that? And that is why I wrote to challenge him.
And you have been saying it's been by consensus.
Absolutely.
Really, consensus.
Absolutely. Because what does Article 50...
Before you went to Parliament,
yes,
the President had given an indication that you guys will be speaking to each other.
Yes.
You clearly didn't seem to speak to each other.
Who said we're not speaking to each other?
Appear to be firm that you were going to win your choice of speaker.
Yes.
You printed everything, even printed Speaker Okwe as elected, as we found in the.
I think they did too.
In the issues.
They did too.
Yes.
They printed two.
Some people say it cannot be true that you will, by consensus, allow for Bagwin to take the seat when, in fact, you had won by your votes. It cannot be true.
No. You see, I told you that the processes leading to the declaration of the results were truncated by what Carlos eventually also intervened to do. So the first ballot had been counted. I've just told you my own suspicions. Counting had just started. I think they got into about 10 or so, right? It had not been concluded, right? And then he intervened to do what he did. And what he did, when he did so, and afterwards they were able to retrieve the ballots, they then gave the ballots to Muntaka, who took them to the Speaker's holding room. That was when they came to call myself and Haruna Idrisu. And when we went there, I said, look, we've not finished the counting. And I think that just as had happened earlier, if we have to go through this, we have to have a rerun. That is engaging ourselves. That was my first position. That no, we can't allow this. Let's do a rerun of the ballot.
That would have been a situation where Carlos would have succeeded in his agenda.
Absolutely.
Because he said that his intention was to procure a rerun.
I didn't know his own intention. But when we went into the dialoguing session, that was my own position. That there should be a rerun because the process had been truncated. Just as we had to do to begin afresh in the voting when it happened on the first 3 occasions. So that was my position. And then Haruna then stepped out. He said, okay, he wants to consult his people. He came back to flatly reject that proposition. So I said, in that case, can we have a situation where, because time was far, I think the time read about 8:30 or so. We had been in this for 8.5 hours. So I submitted another proposal that in that regard, let us deem Alban to have been elected. Let us have the Chief Justice swear him in, on account of which he would also have us sworn in before him. We allow for 2 weeks, during which time, I believe, cooler heads, and I'm quoting myself, cooler heads will prevail so that we'll have a rerun of this to really elect a speaker.
Really?
Yes.
That you're expecting that you swear in a speaker?
Yes.
And then in a matter of a week?
2 weeks, I said.
2 weeks?
Yes. So that's why I said...
a new speaker potentially?
No. I said we then conduct the elections afresh.
With the intention of...
Because that's why I said we should deem Bagbin as having been elected for the purposes of having him also swear us in, and the president coming to be sworn in Parliament and before Parliament.
Right.
So that was the second proposal. He stepped out. The Honorable Haruna Dusi then said, okay, let me step out to consult. When he came back, there was that, again, disagreement that no, I feel like saying that they did not accept that. Whereupon I threw it to him that in that case, what's your own proposal? They said, oh, and then Okujeto, who was following him, said, Bagbin should be declared the winner. And I said, on what account? He said, well, we accounted 137, one spoiled ballot, 138 remaining. So Bagbin should be presumed to have, garnered all those votes. I said, no. How can you, in your wildest imagination, put this out? Eventually, we didn't agree to that. And it's the reason why, as I said, when you come to Article 50, it provides that subject to the provisions of this Constitution, where at the close of nominations on a day of public election, 2 or more candidates have been nominated, the election shall be held, and the candidate who receives the largest number of votes. How do you declare one number and then you're not able to do the counting of for the second one and then presume that he has won?
I see.
So when we then said, okay, let's, by way of having this consensus, agree that Bagbin has been elected. But we will not predicate it on any number. It is the reason why, and the two of us then had to come together to construct what should be the communication from the clerk to us, which is why we said that if you listen to the clerk, he said on this day, Parliament had met.
Right. He didn't speak about the number of votes. Yeah.
I'm just quoting because I was part of the formulation.
Okay.
Had met to elect a speaker.
We've got to move on.
In the process leading to the declaration of the results, an unfortunate incident happened, which occasioned leadership to meet. And from that meeting, and accordingly, I declare this one as having won to take the seat of the speaker. He didn't predicate it on any numbers.
Thank you. Yes. Is this a position you subscribe to?
When you have to explain a phenomenon or a situation and use pie charts, graphs, and all the media for explaining a phenomenon, and it still doesn't add up, then there's a problem. Why do I say so? What happened was captured on national television, and Ghanaians sat through the night till morning to witness what happened. The only thing that they did not witness was when you went into conclave during the consultations and engaged. But as to what happened, everybody saw it. That 2 people were nominated, that there was a process of voting, that there was sorting of the ballots. That one pile was actually counted, and the number for that known, 136
For Michael Okwe.
And that was for Michael Okwe. That there was a second pile, and that pile did not have one vote, which vote was declared to be a spoiled ballot. And what the viewers didn't know also was that even that one ballot, the NDC contended that that ballot was theirs because the person ticked Alban Bagbin and then ticked Mike Okwe, but extensively cancelled the Mike Okwe, which is an expression of his intention not to vote for Mike Okwe. But because the person ticked the two places and extensively ticked that, cancelled that, those sorting it out took a position that this is a spoiled ballot. And Muntaka decided tactically to hold on because he had seen that his supposed pile was bigger than Mike Okwe's pile. So he waited to see what will be the outcome. So anybody who was standing there watching, and Muntaka in particular, who was representing the NDC, could conclude that the bigger pile was for Alban Bagbin.
Could not have been for anybody else.
Could not have been for anybody else because there were just two contestants.
Right.
So if this is 1, 3, 6, and one ballot was spoiled, then the rest will be 1, 3, 8. And if they were piled together by the clerk sorting out, then invariably that had to be Alban Bagbin's votes. Those are the facts.
Right.
Now, Carlos snatching the ballots, chewing some, running, trying to run out, and I did not notice any effort by anybody among those sitting on that side that was dominated by the MPP to stop him. I did not notice any effort by anybody on that side to stop him. Okay, I'm not imputing anything.
No, but did you realize?
There was no.
Did you realize their state? They were so dejected. You could see from the footages. They were.
I'm not even interested in that.
So sad.
I'm not interested in that. I mean, the point is that he did that. Then after that, there was a decision. I mean, a proposal that let's rerun. How can we rerun an election that we can see clearly that we have won?
Okay.
Now, at the end of the day, yes, we agreed with the issue of let's hurry up, let's conclude everything, let us swear MPs in, let us have the president sworn in. The international community is sitting out there and waiting, and we've had enough embarrassment already, and we don't want to continue the embarrassment. But you can't deny Alban Bagbin his just deserve, which is that he won a contest.
Right.
He won a contest.
Okay.
No matter how you couched it, no matter what Haruna, our leader, or anybody, and I saw you actually standing there with the clerk trying to couch how the clerk should present it. No matter how you put it, at the end of the day, that evening or that morning, we're all just trying to ensure that this country is not taken through some further embarrassment.
Right.
But the reality is that that vote was won by Alban Bagbin. He got 138 votes. And the Right Honorable former Speaker got 136 votes. And there was one vote that was polled that we believe was our vote. But clearly, two candidates were ticked. And, I think that properly speaking, that can be declared as a spoiled ballot. Whatever explanations, whatever you say, in my opinion, really doesn't really add up. And that's why you are struggling.
And there was an allegation by Muntaka Mubarak that a Supreme Court judge sought or called one of the NDC MPs elects, a female MP elect, and sought to offer a bribe. Actually offered a bribe, but it was turned down. The Judicial Service and the Chief Justice have written about that, and they are seeking to get to the bottom of that. Is the NDC or Muntaka going to cooperate to get to the bottom of this? We'll return shortly to deal with that. Meanwhile, this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Heavy mosquito spray and coil. Pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it's tasty. DBS Industries and Robert & Sons, seeing is believing. Kofi Bento, your hand has been up for a long time. Can we get 30 seconds of you before we go for the break?
So I want this to be very clear. I unreservedly think that what happened to Madame Eslawusu shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't happen to anyone, especially a lady, especially a minister of state. In the explanation, maybe it didn't come clear. So I condemn it unreservedly, and I think that must go into the record. In future, we should avoid some of these things. Patron Midasi.
Thank you very much. We'll be right back.